pleased to say that we do have some questions on the Twitter feed, and I might just kick off with the first one to get the conversation going, and I'm going to read it out, so thank you for tweeting this. Prof. Co suggests commercial companies should approach departments to start collaborations. Is this collaboration on the basis of research or one-way validation of commercially produced algorithms? Should every department say yes? What approach should we take? Can you see it?
Hello? Oh, it's on.
Is it on?
Okay.
So how should we really interact with the commercial companies as jobbing radiologists?
That's a really difficult question, I think. I take a practical view. I think the reality is most radiologists out there do not have, unless they are grant funded, have a substantial basic science support from mathematicians and physicists to actually do this on a scale that would allow them to create something original in their exploration of data. So I think commercial companies, the interaction would depend on locally what sort of support you have so that you can either do some sort of commercial collaboration with the company, or then you will see whether the product they have, fits into some sort of use case scenario that you want to actually improve within your department. So if one of your bottleneck within your department is, for example, reading a mammogram, then quite rightly you may want to find a vendor with a product out there and then do a bit of market research to see which one, best fits your workflow and the way you read, and then do it as a collaboration and do that as testing. And I think we're at a space at the moment where many companies are willing to loan you a product to do, an initial experience before you actually commit to buying the product. So I think that might be a useful way forward.
Any thoughts, Everson, Chuck?
Yes. So I quite like the approach when you sort of come together with a commercial company and try to sort of improve whatever, even a pre-product actually, and sort of see the angle of research. What can you enhance to them? Because some of I don't want to insult anybody, but some of the companies when they come, they have no idea how actually the product works on the real. Sorry, that's true. In the real world and the workflow, and they'll just come and they haven't thought of all the potential problems or the other challenges, or actually the product could be much better if all these challenges are taken into account. So I see it as a very equal partnership, and that's how I've tried doing my research work. But maybe there are two scenarios. Maybe there's one with a well-developed product and just comes and says, well, listen, this is my product. Let's evaluate it, and I'll loan you the product for free for that and that. And it's fine. It's a valid option. It's not what I sort of prefer and choose to do. But so I think there are two. We live in a free world. There's choice.
What happens in the US?
So I'm at a large academic department actually that has a very active group doing machine learning research. And in a way, we have a number of relationships that we're starting to develop with companies, but there are a couple of things you have to be very careful of. First off, we don't want to pull away our basic science researchers from the work that they're doing. It's a tremendous challenge being a grant-funded researcher, and they're working really more at the basic science aspects of it, not at the translational aspect. So we kind of, even though we look at it that if this adds value, we could take some revenue from the clinical side and use that to support, but you really don't want to pull the effort away from those folks. On the flip side of it, you have to remember that there's a substantial investment of your time, of your information technology staff's time in bringing these systems and integrating them into your workflow. And you have to make sure it's something. Right now, it's a challenge with a number of these, and a number of vendors are looking to become the app store for AI systems and to make them sort of plug and play. If you're working with somebody, I encourage you to think about it in a framework like that, because it's quite possible that the leading vendor for lung nodule detection, for example, that you work with today may not be in business 3 years from today. Or it may be that the leading algorithm that does that 3 years from today is by somebody else. And whereas you could look at having a depreciation and a life cycle for a CT or an MR device, trying to swap out AI algorithms may be actually even more challenging than swapping out equipment, depending on how you've structured your approach.
Okay, I want to move on to a topic which there's a few tweets about. It's actually about collecting large data cases, curating and labeling cases. And we have one question here from Amrita Kumar. Can we discuss how radiologists can set up data curation and labeling in their trusts? We have another question or comment from Theo, who I think is working with me. Thank you, Theo. Does the panel agree that one of the greatest bottlenecks for machine learning in radiology is generating large annotated data sets? If so, is the workload for radiologists going to get worse before it can get better? And actually, I have to say that I feel at the moment where we are at the very beginning of this story, that developing the really fantastic data sets is actually one of our biggest jobs as the radiology community. And so I hand it over to the speakers. What do you all think about this? How should we go about this? Should we have consortia? I mean, yeah, what are your thoughts? Is this our biggest job at the moment?
Yes, I volunteer.
Very fair. I think, the size of the database will depend on the type of disease. Obviously, when you look at mammograms and chest x-rays, you're going to have thousands. And also, screening mammograms, for example, in cases like the NHS breast screening program, you're going to have more access to a large database. So I think, as much as it's very important to have large database, I think it's very important for us to also make sure that we have highly curated smaller databases, because some databases are going to be small. And I think we have a talk later on by Nikos on the smaller databases, because some diseases are more rare than the others, In terms of I quite like the first question, actually, in terms of how do you do it. I think the best way to do it is in real time. If there is actually a way that a CT will come up, and I'm just picking ovarian cancer metastatic. One of those immunotherapy metastatic renal cell carcinomas, you open the study, your heart sinks. Because you're going to be a million of lesions. They're all going to go in different directions, and you're really done. You're really doomed, It'll take half an hour. How about having a sort of an automated, and one of the, there are multiple algorithms, but the continuous learning that you kind of do it, you feed it back, and then, the algorithm corrects it, and then you get to the ground truth sort of easier. But if you do it as you report, maybe it adds to the individual workload, but actually ultimately gives you a really accurate data set at a sort of more spread workload in a way. And if you have teams of people working in the same team, like we have a very strong gynecological team, there's like 4 of us reading them, it could be a way to get out of the massive data sets. I don't know.
Just very quickly, I think the question is right. I think it will get worse before it gets better. I think there's no running away from that. But the thing is, sometimes you do have to get through a bit of pain to get somewhere. So as I was saying that, when CT and MRI first came, and radiologists that were not accustomed to doing that sort of work had to relearn that involved pain. So I think it's going to be the same with AI. If we want to bring ourselves onto the platform and move forward, unfortunately, it's going to be painful. The question, therefore, is how to spread the pain. And I have a view that, you really have to harness the entire department on board. It's no longer an endeavor that says 2 members of the staff can elect to do that. It's either everybody jumps on this bandwagon and row together, otherwise the boat is not going to go.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. I was going to make a plea for standardized data collection, in fact, which is, I believe, is really central to our abilities to drive this forward. And one of the efforts that I was privileged to be part of, which was the RSNA's Structured Reporting Initiative, and now we're developing what are called common data elements, basically predefined elements that you can share because they're well-crafted definitions for them. And this is being incorporated as part of use cases, the idea that when you then make a determination about a lesion, you're putting that information into basically filling in a form. But it allows us to mine that information out, and then you have the information that is in electronic form in the clinical record that you can then correlate with the image information to use that for further validation and to train the AI models more effectively.
I mean, I guess it would be nice to know how we can actually implement this data curation on a daily basis in real life, because at the moment, there isn't really a straightforward tool to do that as such. In most departments, probably at UPenn, it's all there. But it's tough. I mean, for most of us, we can appreciate that that might be the best way to be collecting the data and collecting large data sets, but it's tough because it's not available.
Well, I just want to make a plea for routine collection. It's really kind of funny. We are, as radiologists, I'm just curious, how many people here are clinical radiologists? It's most of the crowd. We're creatures of habit, which is a polite way of saying that we're obsessive compulsive. But you know, it's funny, I've only been at Penn for 4 years, and when I came there, we do this what we call code oncology, which is this lesion, this just 2 lines on cancer cases, and we also code up our abdomen CTs for 4 organs as sort of suspicion of abnormality. And I thought, I will never get in the habit of doing that. And after the first 2 days, it was entirely rote. It just seemed like, it almost seemed unnatural not to be doing it. But all of that, the reason I mention it is it becomes tremendously important because it gives us data points that we can all use. And the name of the game in this and doing things with AI is all about data and being able to have understandable, meaningful data. And that's really what we want to try to achieve from all this.
Okay, I'm going to move on now from data to another couple of questions that have come in about training. So from Nick Papanikolaou, we have, what are the 3 most important steps for a young radiologist to take to enter the new era of AI? And we've had a couple of jobs being offered over here. I've got a job as well, a PhD if anybody wants.
The answer is come and talk to me.
Yeah, come and talk to us. But there was another question. Do we lack an appropriate education or courses for MDs in AI? Should we develop them together with CS? And I don't know actually what CS is. Computer science, okay, apologies. So please, the panel, what do you think? And actually then I'm going to open it up to the floor, okay?
I mean, I think ultimately you have to include this in the curriculum. It's going to be included in the curriculum of medical school and then radiology training. It's like, God, do you remember, I mean, I'm old, but most of you probably did some barium enemas. I mean, on my first year, I was the barium queen of my department, I would rather do AI than do the barium stuff.
Well said.
So I just think it's a must. And I think in between, until all these systems are actually in place, because it will take time, then, what we're doing here is a way of education and getting people in. And various, I think local centers have various local initiatives. We certainly are open, in our center, but I know you are. And exchange, I think exchange is important, between the centers.
Just a quick one for me. I know that that the president of the Royal College of Radiologists is speaking tomorrow about training, and I know that the European Society of Radiology are also looking at curricula and training. Yes, and I don't know what Charles thinks.
This is pure hypothesis, and I'm not speaking on behalf of any organization, but I actually believe that going forward, we will have in our radiology departments a data scientist whose job it'll be analogous to that of medical physicists. So the clinical role of the medical physicist is to check the CT scanner every day, right? Make sure it's calibrated, make sure that the information it produces is accurate, make sure it's not overdosing people. In other words, it's safe and effective. I think we're going to see the same thing, that as we bring AI as an imaging modality into our departments, we will have a data scientist who is responsible for a similar role, making sure these systems are working. For us in radiology, we're not going to be data scientists. I don't think everyone is going to have to learn Pascal. I don't think people are going to have to be programmers to be successful radiologists. But I think we're going to have to understand enough of it in the same, you can groan now, in the same way that you had to learn medical physics as part of your radiology training. I think you're going to learn about machine learning as part of your radiology training, not to be a machine learning expert, but to be able to be conversant with machine learning experts to make sure that these technologies can be applied safely in our departments.
So we ran over a little bit on the lectures, and I wanted to just take a few extra minutes from your coffee break, if that's okay. We've had a few extra tweets. Anwar Padani asks about natural language processing. We have questions about whether we're at a stage now for meta-analysis, and how can we validate tools for resist. I'd like to open it up to any comments from the audience. Has anybody got any burning questions about, yes? Do we have a microphone? Yeah.
I am an NHS radiologist, very poor radiologist compared to American radiologists. I want to ask the American speaker, Dr. Khan, in 10 years' time, how do you plan number of radiologists you need in America? I mean, at the moment, you have 150 to 200 radiologists per million population, is that right?
No, I heard up until the very end. Yeah, that's probably about right. How many radiologists we will need?
You need in 10 years' time.
In 10 years, sure, because I have the ability to predict all of that. Well, you know, so it's a great question. Right now, we'll need about 3 radiologists for the entire country of United States. That's my prediction. No, not true at all. So. Jim Thrall, who's past chair of radiology at Massachusetts General, was a past chair of Board of Chancellors of America. His estimate was that PACS as a technology increased our productivity about 30%. So what does that mean? That means that we would all be staying 30%, without PACS as a technology, we would be all staying 30% longer to get our work done, or we would have to hire 30% more people, or our incomes would be 30% lower, you know, however you want to measure it. I think the fact is that right now, the demand for imaging services, I don't see it slacking. We're seeing organic growth at our institution of like 3 to 5% per year. Reimbursement is going down, but the volume is going up, and I think these technologies are going to help us. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know. I can't predict off to the future. I know. I don't think the technology is going to put radiologists out of business. I think it's.
Can I ask teleradiology? I mean, I work in a district hospital in London. 30% of the workload is done by teleradiology. Do you think artificial intelligence will even further improve the teleradiology? Therefore, perhaps that may help if we are not sure about job planning in the future.
I think this is tough. You know, it's a tough question. I mean, I think the AI will improve any radiology, being the teleradiology or not. I think most of the cancer work is probably not outsourced. Some is, but most of it tends to be kept in the hospitals unless it's routine follow-up every year, at least in the UK where I practice and when you practice. So I think maybe it will sort of help, or I'm not saying put teleradiology out of business, but it will help being more efficient, because it might weed out those normal scans, even like a year follow-up, no recurrence. Once we know how to segment normals and detect any abnormality, the AI will move that. So I think, yes, it'll be, the work of teleradiology will probably be more efficient, probably quicker than the work of a trauma center or a very specialized cancer center. But I see AI as not replacing. I see it as actually, I feel frustrated on a daily work, not the research work, the clinical work, of how inefficient the systems are, especially in the UK. It takes me, by the time I find a working dictation dictaphone and a working computer and that everything works and I could put up the Epic, you know, it's 15 minutes, you know. And in the UK, we do have this problem probably more than some of the centers in the US, because I can make the comparison fairly confidently. So, and AI will help on that, the workflow, for sure. So I don't think it'll put us out of business. I think it will make us more efficient. I think you might like to go to work better if you had the AI.
Okay, I'm going to open it up for one more question or comment from maybe one of our young radiologists, anybody in the early stages of their career, rather unlike the people up at the front here.
Did we put you off, or are you going to carry on?
Yeah. Can I just have hands up? How many people in the audience are actually in the process of collecting any data sets for the purposes of machine learning? Can we just have a rough idea? Quite a number. That's impressive. I think everybody's behind this, this mission. It looks like it in the room. And I think maybe at that point, probably everybody's gagging for a coffee. So thank you for attending the session, for your interaction. Thank you for the tweets. And thank you especially to the speakers.